Hello, everybody. All right. So with that, and Rick's back. Okay. How you doing now, Rick?
I think I'm doing good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay, and
me?
I can hear you. So it looks like
That's
you
good.
went back to your other computer or something like that, right?
No, on my Acer still, or my
All right.
laptop that I've got
All right.
well out here. So
Hey, Xenu and Xena. Hey, Elk. All right. So, any idea what was going on there?
no, no idea. Just it's a low end laptop, so it's not like my main computer. It's I think it's toss up between a combination of the net in this place being poor, and I'm probably the furthest away from the router that I could be in this
Hmm.
house, and having a cheap laptop.
All right. Well, it looks like you're
So
okay now, more or less. So, anyways, so to let everybody know what I just told you. So tonight, of course, um, what's on tap for tonight is, of course, we have one article we're going to probably go over from Bounding into Comics. This time, it's going to be a comic related article. As we're going to look at some commentary from Tom Brevoort, who I guess is doubling down on some comments he made in regards to X-Men. We also will, of course, have the wrestling wrap up and the This Day in Each History towards the end of the show. If you guys haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, Rick, would you like to do an intro? Maybe share some links, promote anything. Floor is yours.
I guess I will. I guess I will just put a link in for my latest video from earlier today. Earlier today, for classical music course. So there's that. And most people know who I am. Rick Piper of Cross Comics says right there. So that even helps people all the more if they know who I am.
Hmm.
So after the show, maybe go check out the link loops.
All right. All right. So, anything more, Rick, or shall we keep
Yeah,
going?
yeah, we can get on with the show. This is a no more rehearsal. We know apart by heart.
Mhm. Yep. All right. Well, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and go take a look at the article that we're going to go over tonight? All right. So here we go then. Marvel Comics exec Tom Brevoort doubles down on belief that, quote, for the X-Men, the message is the concept, unquote, writes off those who disagree and use the term, quote unquote, woke in their criticisms as, quote unquote, cretins. So he apparently thinks that he's above everybody else, I guess. That's why he calls people cretins. Cretins is kind of a term like people in upper
Cretins.
class, people who are like kind of in upper class society would use towards middle class and poor people as being kind of beneath
Yeah,
them.
more I'd say poor, but yeah, I
Yeah.
get we. I know I've heard the term many times before.
Article by Spencer McCooley, published March 5th, 2024, which of course was yesterday. Let's go ahead, and I guess there's a kind of a interesting take on Wolverine right there, I guess. All right, so
That's supposed to be Wolverine?
I'm thinking, well, yeah, Wolverine of Earth 63 bears his claws in Bishop War College, Volume 1, Number 3, 2023. I guess this is a more recent, and how I could tell is because of the claws there, right? But I guess it's
Yeah.
of Earth 63, I guess, so a different Earth. So in adding and
Okay.
insulting, oh, go ahead, Rick.
I said, okay.
All right. In adding an insulting edge to his previous attempt to rewrite history through a modern lens, Marvel Comics exec Tom Brevoort has dismissed those who dissent to his belief that progressive social messaging is an inherent part of X-Men's identity, and specifically use the term woke, quote unquote, in their criticism as nothing more than cretins, quote unquote, acting in bad faith. Yeah. Well, he sounds pretty much like an elitist, doesn't he?
Yeah. How much his study has he done? Like we've seen videos where Stan has said, consciously, I didn't have any, it wasn't about, um, you know, any sort of thing, prejudice or whatever thing that he
Yeah.
was trying to think. He said maybe there might have been something subconscious in his head, but consciously he wasn't going to that. He was just trying to write a comic or create, something and be a little lazy with, how he got the powers and how they figured it out. Well, each of them had to figure it differently, obviously, because, uh, so,
Yeah. So, anyways, um, all right. So, and yeah, and we've heard before that many, including Stanley, many of the old timers had always focused more on story over messaging.
yeah.
Not to
But
say, as we've seen back in the golden age, not to say that you know there wasn't influence there, like their influences from their own lives didn't have some get into
impact.
the stories a little bit, but it didn't override the stories.
Yeah. Stan said he was just trying to write a decent story, getting characters, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a conscious thing at the front of his mind. He
Right.
says maybe in the back of his mind, subconsciously, maybe there was an influence there,
Mm-hmm.
but consciously, no. And so you can't really go with the subconscious, and the subconscious thing is only a maybe or something like that. It's what he
Yeah.
was conscious thinking was not, well, I want to do a parody or I want to do, social thing on thing and saying this. We're starting where Gene Roddenberry says, he purposely did stuff like that in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. So, anyways, let's continue on with the article here. As previously reported, Bravewart first shared his read of the teen's origins in December 2023, when, in response to fans' hopes that the upcoming X-Men event From the Ashes would curve Marvel's merry band of mutants line away from focusing on overtly progressive grandstanding, in parentheses, look no further than the decision to put Wolverine, of all people, in a thruple with Jean Grey and Cyclops, unparenthesed there. Thruple, I'm guessing thruple means like basically a threesome or a three person couple, basically.
yeah,
I guess. Um, and take it back to its more adventurous roots. He declared via his personal Twitter account, quote, "It's X-Men. The message is the premise," unquote. Now, we know
According
that
to Stan.
now we know that while Stan Lee has clearly stated he never was trying to make it about, he wasn't never trying to make it about a soapbox or turn his stuff into a soapbox. Other people have commented over the years that that some people have made the argument that maybe X-Men is kind of an allegory to like, well, since it came about in the 60s, it would have been an allegory to the civil rights movement. Some people have made that argument before.
Yeah. And that could be, and that's what I said. Stan said maybe that might have been in the back of his head, subconscious influence, but consciously, no.
Yeah. And though he initially allowed his brief tweet to stand as his one and only statement on the matter, the Marvel Comics senior VP and executive editor would eventually return to the topic on March 3rd, courtesy of a reader question submitted to his personal Substack newsletter, Men with a Hat. I guess that's a Man with a Hat, which I guess is like kind of a play on the band name Men with Hats or Men Without Hats or whatever. That could be it. I don't know. But, quote, with the new X-Men 97 show coming out, a lot of mainstream attention has been put on the X-Men. And we've gone over some articles on that as well on this channel too.
Yeah. Actually, wasn't that supposed to be released? When's that supposed to be released? Like yesterday, the first episode?
Yeah, I think sometime right around this week or last week is when it was supposed to be released. Yeah.
I'm thinking March 5th. I want to go as much as I've heard.
Which would have been yesterday. Yeah.
As much as I've heard of all the crap about it, I do want to check it out for myself, just so I can say I've seen it, and not that that's a bragging point.
And all the usual suspects are making their rounds, accusing it of being woke garbage before it's even released, and it's prompted a lot of conversation about the role that progressivism and so-called quote-unquote wokeness does and should play in the X-Men, unquote. I just thought of something as we were just thinking of, since they were just bringing up the whole X-Men 97, one of the controversies we were talking about is how they changed up Rogue there, right?
Yeah.
In a way, and I was just thinking of this, okay? So, okay, we know what Rogue's mutant powers are, right? Her mutant power basically is to absorb, the energy from other living beings through physical contact.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And of course,
and if somebody has superpowers, she gains those
mutant powers if it's their mutant. Okay. Well, here's the thing. There was something to her character by making her, voluptuous, by making her have a very feminine woman. Because what I was thinking, because of the nature of her powers, and her being such a southern beauty, as it were, it's kind of the old poisonous fruit bit. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think it's a key element to her story, because it's like, okay, here you have this very voluptuous Southern belle who, every guy would probably want, right? Every guy saw would want to engage with her, right?
Yeah. But she can't.
Then they come to realize that they can't because what ends up happening is as soon as skin to skin contact,
get the life sucked out of you.
Yeah, it's like it's the old poisonous fruit, shtick, and I think it's one of those things that people may not understand in terms of that's kind of an interesting story element to explore, and that they did over the year with her, right? Is that poisonous fruit, element.
Here's a thing that I'm not. It's probably been brought up before, but could we consider Rogue a vampire?
Um, maybe not in the traditional sense. I mean, um,
Vampires suck their life out usually through the blood, but she does it just by touch, right?
yeah. I mean, it's some you could argue there is that is, I guess, a form of vampirism. Okay, I guess, but she doesn't like turn into a bat. She does. The people that she drains don't
Yeah.
become her slaves or don't become
No.
her thralls. You
No.
know.
Well, not everybody that like Dracula or whatever, suck the blood of becomes slave or whatever. Some people just die, right? Because he sucks the
Uh,
life out of them.
yeah, but
It's just a thought that I just had because
yeah, I mean, theoretically, I guess you could, in a way, maybe not in the sense that most people would think of a vampire, but yeah,
yeah,
you may make a very interesting point there. But
and
wrote a reader who simply referred to herself as Callie. Quote, do you believe that the X-Men in their comic should be taking a stand and making a statement on current issues minorities face in the spirit with their history and origins? I personally, and here's another thing too. Now, granted, I only recently started, looking back at the early days of Marvel and Timely and stuff like that, right? You
yeah,
know, it's not like what I did with DC, but if I understand correctly, the whole thing with the Sentinels didn't come until much later. Initially, many of the
yeah,
early X-Men stories were just about them fighting off against Magneto and his Brotherhood of Evil. You know,
yeah. Oh, I'm sure that I haven't read the early ones, obviously. Yeah,
right?
I could have, but
We may
they
end up
face.
reading them at some point.
Yeah, yeah. But I was just gonna say there would have been other villains that faced as well. But again, it depends on what they mean by history and origin. Do they mean in the comics precisely, or do they mean in the comics and maybe outside the comics how they were created and why they were created as characters?
Right.
Because they're talking about that, or just the how and why that they were created as characters, then the person doesn't know what they're talking. Well, they didn't say exactly what.
Yeah,
They weren't.
in spirit with their history and origins. I personally feel like that's a very important thing to keep, as nearly all of X Men's best stories were made through the lens such as God Loves, Man Kills, Days of Future Past, the original Sentinel sagas, and even a lot of the stuff in the Krakoan era, unquote. All right. And then here's some Bravort began his response, quote, first off, I think the ill-defined accusation of being, in smaller quotes, woke is nonsense. And I tend to turn off and tune out whenever it comes up in almost any context, unquote. Quote, the people who are using it and who brandish it with a sword to attack whatever they don't like tend to be mostly, well, cretins, unquote. He then declared, quote, they aren't making a good faith argument. Um, they've just come up with an all purpose. Well, okay, here's the funny thing about that, though. It's not the people who are using it now who came up with the term. It's actually the people direct. Yeah, it was actually originally the SJWs who actually first started using the word woke.
Yeah.
Well, because
We get,
the whole context of being progressive means you progress beyond the realm of like what
You,
they would
you
say superstition. It was
woke is basically saying you've been enlightened, you've woken up.
right, exactly. So, um, yeah.
But
So
I do have to agree. There probably is a lot of people, and probably most people do use it in the way that he says. But don't. But because some people do, or maybe not even most, but some do use it like that, doesn't mean you discount the people
yeah,
that use it the right way and all that.
right.
And
Yeah.
even the people using it that way, you have to sit back and say, do they have a point? Look at their argument. He's saying they're making, but they're making, they aren't making a good faith argument. Well, what's the argument? Obviously, usually I think most of these people are,
Yeah,
but they're
most
just
of the time,
picking the,
it's like they just want to dismiss it because they just think, well, we just don't like change or whatever. But and obviously people don't. But when you
well, some
have
people do,
like when
some
you
people
have
don't.
established characters and you have established histories, and then you're perverting them, that's usually when people are going to get upset. You know, um,
Yeah.
an infinitely adaptable scarlet letter that they can hang on anything they don't like for any reason.
And,
But that's
and
not necessarily the case. I think people do have legitimate reasons, especially when when you're just totally just
yeah,
ignoring the previous established continuity and just completely dumping on the old continuity just to push your own agenda.
yeah. And the thing is, it's not like that their side doesn't do the exact same thing with other words,
Mm-hmm.
and more so and more
Like
heinous words.
like how they like to call anybody who supports Trump a national socialist, right?
Yeah, or just because you disagree with somebody on something of a certain issue, you might be called the R word.
Or as Yellow Flash would put it, you might be labeled an ist or a phobe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So um, from there, turning his attentions from said critics' terminology to their actual arguments, Bravort next told Cowley, quote, that all laid out, I'll tell you what I said previously on social media. When a version of this question came up, for X-Men, the message is the concept. This is a book about oppressed outsiders, each a minority of one of for all that they share the X gene and a commonality of purpose. But I don't. But then again, I don't think that's how it. I don't think that's how it started out. I don't think that was. And we've talked. You were mentioning it earlier. That wasn't Stan Lee's original concept of X-Men, right?
yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
that was.
Part of the concept was obviously he created them just as superheroes. He got a bit lazy using the mutant, and in that, yeah, he said, "Oh, they're going to fight for a world that hates them." You know, you know, and
And
there's the
eventually,
thing.
even DC adopted that concept too. Whereas in the Marvel universe they call it an X gene or a mutancy, and in DC they eventually started calling it a meta gene,
Yeah,
right?
the only difference is DC doesn't really have a team like the X-Men that focuses on the metagene. Yeah, sure, probably most of the people that are on a team have a metagene. You know, all their heroes are metagenes. That's where it comes from.
Well,
Where
I can't remember. I think there was actually a team. It was a government team.
yeah, there's been a couple government superhero
I
teams.
can't I can't remember the group's name, but there was like a government team where they did acknowledge that they were like meta humans or whatever, and and I'm not and no, it's not Suicide Squad. That's not the one I'm talking about. It was
Oh,
Helix. Helix. That's what it was. Helix.
yeah, but what I mean is, um, the people on the teams everybody who has a superpower, unless they've gotten it for, like Superman,
Right.
yeah, technically he's a metahuman, but he didn't get his powers because of some accident or whatever on Earth, or born with them. Well,
Well,
technically
in
he was
Superman's case, his case is almost his situation is kind of more of a unique situation because
yeah,
he's basically an alien. He's an alien from another planet whose body has a different, whose
yeah,
metabolism, his body chemistry reacts differently to Earth's atmosphere than most
and
Earthlings.
some, yeah. Well, I'm just using him as an example. Unless you have somebody like Clark, like versus I don't know, who can I use? Fire from the X-Men. I mean, from the Justice League. The green thing lady, or Firestorm. Uh, there's several others. I don't know why. And easy ones. I don't know why Flash even.
Well, both
But
Flashes had basically their powers came via accidents, but some people would I guess the argument was made later. The reason they were because those type of accidents would have killed most people, but
yeah,
yet they ended up getting superpowers. Some people would argue that maybe they did have a latent meta gene in there that was activated through those accidents. That's, I think, the argument.
yeah. But what my point is, everybody that has a superpower, unless they're a special case like Superman, everybody that's from Earth that has a superpower, uh, it said metagene. Now in Marvel, you have people that have superpowers that aren't tech. Spider-Man's not considered a mutant, although his is, because you would in what's the name of it? DC, they would say that the spider biting him caused his metagene to activate. Where in Marvel they have the X gene, they have the inhuman stuff, they have accidents, and even Daredevil, he's not considered a mutant. All these various things they have a thing.
All right.
So
welcome back, Elf. By the way,
but my quick point, and I think everybody gets it, is with DC, the meta gene covers everybody. In Marvel, the X gene just covers a certain population.
Right.
Or the meta gene covers almost everybody. Anybody on Earth, we'll say it.
Yeah. So who are hated and feared because they are different and who have constantly struggled to find acceptance within a society that does not understand them and wishes that they would just go away, unquote. Quote, every X-Men comic book published since 1963 is about these things to one degree or another. Well, I'd have to actually disagree because I think for some of those very early ones, I don't think they even were.
Well, I'm not sure whether they covered it. I forget, but it was in a sense part of it. They fought for a world that feared and hated them. Yes, they went to save their lives, but at the same time, it wasn't supposed to be an analogy for the civil rights movement or whatever. Stan has said that. What was I thinking? Something about that. I forget.
Yeah.
To one degree, never. I forget what I was thinking.
I was going to continue on there.
Yeah.
Unless you had something else you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I do, but I can't remember what I was thinking.
All right. Well, then we'll just continue on with the article, and then if it comes back to you, it comes back to you. Quote, without them, it wouldn't be X-Men. So while our primary objective is always going to be to entertain and thrill, this is always going to be prevalent stratum in every. So I think what he's trying to say there is that the message is actually more what they're after than the entertainment. Whereas Stan had always stated, no, we were out to entertain first. You know,
But you know what? I know something. I know what I was thinking now. But they forget in Marvel, a lot of characters fight for the good of people, even when people hate them. Spider-Man, the Hulk, Inhumans, I believe. And there's others that there's this.
well, even there was a time when Namor did it too. Even though we
Yeah,
talked about how he was initially introduced more as a well, but the art, of course, the debate we always have about Namor is, is he really a villain? He may be a villain from our perspective, but he's not necessarily a villain to his own people, right?
yeah. Everybody's a hero of their own story, right?
Right.
but but Marvel has lots of characters that fight and help that people hate and fear them, yet they fight for the good no matter what.
Yeah,
Spider-Man
and
being
it's funny because you were talking about the Stan Lee interview earlier, and we're going to get the article covers that too here. So notably, despite this read of the X-Men having become a recent element of the team's pop culture identity, it was not part of their original concept. As explained by the team's co-creator Stan Lee during a 2004 interview given to the Archive of American Television's Lisa Terada for the group's Living Television collection, quote, well, there's a funny story. Here's a funny story. Everything's a funny story. Unquote. Quote, after I had done the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Spider-Man, I think X-Men came next, unquote, said the industry icon. Quote, the X-Men and one other, I think Daredevil, they're about the same time, unquote. Oh, anyway, I wanted to do another group of superheroes, but I was getting tired now of figuring out how they get their superpowers, unquote, he explained. Quote, I couldn't have everybody bitten by a radioactive spider or exposed to a gamma ray explosion. Yeah, those kind of things are kind of one in a million type scenarios. Yeah,
yeah,
that it would be a little much to believe that those were commonplace in any universe,
yeah,
right? I mean, if you think about it, if you did have a bunch of gamma ray explosions happening everywhere, you'd have a whole world probably with big hulking green monsters lurking about, right?
yeah. Or gray,
Or
or
gray, yeah,
even red.
yeah. Quote, and I took the cowardly way out, unquote, he continued. Quote, I said to myself, why don't I just say they're mutants? They were born that way, unquote. We all know there are mutants in real life. There's a frog with 5 legs, things like that. So I won't have to think of new excuses. I'll get as many as I want, and yeah, he's a mutant. That's all. Unquote. So,
Yeah,
even in that explanation, there wasn't no like huge complex explanation for it. There wasn't no like, oh yeah, there are mutants, and there wasn't even the idea that okay, he acknowledged, yeah, mutancy does happen in real life, which is true. You do have, in all forms of life, you do have that anomaly, anomalous mutancy that
yeah,
happens. But
yeah,
it's not like he didn't even go as far as to say, yeah, they're mutants and you need to treat them with respect, or anything like that. He just simply
well,
acknowledged, yeah, there are mutants out there. That's the
yeah.
only thing
But
he said.
he acknowledged he created it because of he wanted to be lazy in his writing, and in a lot of ways, and coming up with a lot of characters. I don't blame him. It's nice to have that little easy thing to say how they
Mm-hmm.
got their powers.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's figuring out how they found out about their powers.
Mm-hmm.
Still, you're still left with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't tackle that right at first.
And that's the end of the article right there. No, there would be more, but and then I don't know if this is from the first X-Men, but here's a cover where you have all the X-Men kind of.
Well, that's not a cover. That's inside, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that is from X-Men.
Written by Stan Lee, drawn by, so it was a Lee Kirby project, basically. So, oh, there we go. So let's see, what time is it now?
And it's 35 after.
35 after, yeah. So I think we'll move on then to the wrestling wrap up, just because I want to get in under an hour today. So we've gone over an hour last couple of times here, so I want to get under an hour today. If I get to about 15 minutes, that'd be fine. But anyway, so with that, that's all the articles we're going to go over tonight. But so what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap up. We just had some quickie stuff to talk about. On the WWE side of things, it was announced. So the other day, I mentioned to everybody that Paul Heyman was selected to enter the. He was the first person chosen to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year during WrestleMania weekend. Today, they announced a second inductee in this year's class of the WWE Hall of Fame, Bull Nakano, the former WWE Women's Champion, former Women's World Champion in both Mexico and Japan as well. She had, of course, a legendary feud with Medusa Miceli, who went by the name of Linda Blaze in the early 90s there during her time in the WWE. So thus far, the Hall of Fame class of 2024 for this year's WrestleMania will be Paul Heyman for his contributions as a manager and promoter.
Cool.
And go ahead, Rick. You were about to say something?
I just said cool.
And Bull Nakano, who is the former women's champion. Let's see. Also, it apparently in TKO's further attempts to try to minimize Vince McMahon's exposure in the company now as much as possible, they are now censoring out his picture in the WWE 2024 video game, particularly during the times when he did have a particular role in making announcements during certain things. So as they're trying to minimize his appearances as much as possible due to some of the recent lawsuits and allegations. I mentioned yesterday that he sold some of his TKO stocks. So that's all we got for the WWE news right now. So we got some AEW news to talk a bit about. First off, tonight's Dynamite. On tonight's Dynamite. And of course, I'll go over the results tomorrow. But for tonight's Dynamite, let's see. In a non-title tag team match, Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, the Undisputed Kingdom members of Mike Bennett and Matt Taven will be taking on AEW World Champion Samoa Joe and Swerve Strickland. Hook defends the FTW title against Brian Cage. Matt Menard takes on Kill Switch, and kind of a continuation of the Christian Cage Daniel Garcia feud, as associates of the two are now obviously fighting. In a battle of two former champions, the inaugural AEW Women's World Champion Riho is set to take on former TBS champion Chris Statlander. Another non-title match, Ring of Honor television champion Kyle Fletcher takes on his Don Callis family teammate Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay, who just made his official in-ring debut with AEW, officially becoming All Elite this past Sunday at Revolution. So, and in other news, I did kind of briefly mention this too. Supposedly, because as more information came out about it, so I mentioned that Sammy Guevara was recently suspended by AEW, for some incidents that happened during his match with Jeff Hardy. It was supposedly due to the fact. Oh, Captain Go Away, hey, Captain Go Away, Captain Finity. Welcome to the show. Thanks for dropping in. Of course, if you guys can help us out by liking and sharing the stream and seeing if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and we'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So, anyways, yeah. So on a recent edition of Rampage, Sammy Guevara accidentally injured Jeff Hardy, kneeing him in the head while executing a shooting star press. AEW apparently claimed that he did not follow concussion protocols, albeit Guevara said he did not know that that Jeff had a concussion, So, but the thing is that even though it's now been announced that he was suspended, he was actually involved in a no DQ match against Powerhouse Hobbs, the very next show, which was Rampage, I believe, or Collision. So, don't know what's really going on there, but that's all. That's pretty much all there. And of course, and due to the fact that Sting retired after his and Darby Allin's AEW World Tag Title defense at Revolution, I believe that they, of course, have vacated those titles. Don't know if that announcement will be made tonight on Dynamite or what those titles are vacant. They'll, now usually when you vacate a title like that, usually the company will fill it generally, but usually through a tournament or sometimes just naming two top tag team contenders to vie for it. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. So with that, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to this day in each. As I said, we're going to run things a little short tonight here. Now tomorrow night we will more than likely. Let me just see if it's even up yet. It may not even be up yet, but I would think it's up by now. But we'll do this tomorrow night. Of course, tomorrow night we'll most likely cover the Indie Comic Showcase from Bleeding Fool. Let me just double check and see if that's even up yet. Because sometimes they don't get it up until real late, well after time. That's one of the reasons why I don't do it a lot on Wednesdays, because usually when I'm picking stories out to do, it's not up yet. It doesn't come up until.
Yeah, well, isn't it supposed to not go up till for sure on Thursdays?
It's usually up by Thursday, at the latest. And yes, we'll be doing that tomorrow. We'll be doing that tomorrow night, and don't know who I'll get to co-host yet, but we'll find out soon enough. So with that, now of course, with today being Wednesday, March the 6th, 2024, let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! Let me just remind myself, 2013, 1994, 1974, and 2019. Okay. So with all that being said, let's take a look back at this day in history. And first off, we're going to head back 50 years ago today. And on this date, 50 years ago today, as part of the ABC After School Specials, Hanna-Barbera Productions' Cyrano premiered on this date back in 1970, 50 years ago today. ABC's after-school special Cyrano, based on the Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmund Rolston. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, would premiere on this date back in 1974. Long-nosed Cyrano de Bergerac, voice of Jose Ferrer, reprising his Oscar-winning title role, helps an army officer woo Roxanne, voice of Joan Van Ark, the woman Cyrano himself loves, in this Hanna-Barbera Productions animated episode. So this is basically an animated adaptation of the Cyrano de Bergerac story.
Cool.
So 50 years ago today, premiered on ABC's weekend special. I believe it was the weekend special, not the, it could be after school special, it could be weekend special, type of thing. So, anyways, moving ahead to 1994, 30 years ago today, on this date, 30 years ago today, from of course what is now today known as, I believe, Viking Hall, what used to be known as the ECW Arena. During its time when it was still an NWA affiliate, during ECW's TV taping, the following title matches changed hands and were later broadcast. Public Enemy defeated Kevin Sullivan and Tasmaniac, the guy we all know today as Taz, current AEW commentator, for the ECW tag team titles. With that episode of NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling aired on March 8th. And then Tasmaniac also won the ECW Television Championship from JT Smith, which aired on the following week on the 15th. And then of course Smith would regain the title from Tasmaniac, which would later that night. So this all happened on one night, but they were shown over a 3-week period. So Public Enemy would defeat Kevin Sullivan, Tasmaniac, which would air on March 8th. And then Taz would defeat JT Smith for the TV championship, which would air on March 15th. And then Smith would regain the title from the Tasmaniac and that would air on 22nd. Now, with the way they were still doing it at this point, even though technically this is all happening in one night, one day, one night kind of thing, they were trying to make it seem like it was happening over, like, for example, Public Enemy did not, Taz did not, like, lose it all, that all didn't happen in one
it happened in one night, not over 3 weeks like they showed it.
Right. That's what they were. That was the whole idea of kayfabe. Of course, 1994 was still the early days of Raw too, when had the weekday programming like you do now with like Dynamite. You have Raw and SmackDown, you have Dynamite and Rampage and all that. So, anyways, moving on to the next piece in each history. Moving ahead to 2013. On this day, 11 years ago today, in 2013, the fifth and final issue of Adventures of Augusta Wind went on sale on newsstands from IDW on this date back in 2013, 11 years ago today. The cover price was $3.99, was 32 pages. So on this date, 11 years ago today, the fifth and final issue of Adventures of Augusta Wind went on sale on this date back in 2013. So, let's see. Now, moving on to the final piece in Niche history, which was 5 years ago today. on this date 5 years ago today, the OVA episode The Thousand Musketeers and TMS Double Eagle was released on as an OVA. Was part of an anime series. It was actually aired as an anime episode, the anime itself, Thousand Musketeers, was 12 episodes, and then they added this in there as part of the package as well. So the TMS Double Eagle OVA, The Thousand Musketeers, was released on this date in 2019, which was 5 years ago today. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And before we head out here, Rick, did you want to do an outro? Maybe share any links or anything like that?
Yeah, share a link to another one of my possible music videos there over on my channel. Yeah, just go take a listen. And if you're already like, share, subscribe to my channel, all that wonderful stuff.
All right. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. We'll be back here tomorrow night. We'll be doing the Indie Comic Showcase from Bleeding Fool. Hopefully, I'll be able to grab a co-host to join me and comment on that. Contact on some books that are coming out that you all want to check out. Of course, Friday I have R.J. Carter from Critical Blast joining me, as we'll be starting our coverage of February 1940 books that went on sale in that month, February 1940. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale from DC. Most notably, looking at the first appearances of course, Lex Luthor and Hourman. So with that, I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.
It's only your way.